Antarctica. It's the least explored, least understood continent on Earth.
Scientists drilled into an Antarctic ice wall expecting frozen water, but they found DNA instead. Antarctica is often described as a frozen graveyard, locked in time for millions of years. But when scientists examined an 1,100-foot ice wall, they uncovered traces of DNA where none should exist. This wasn't just a surprise. It challenged what we thought we knew about life on Earth. Stay with me. The origin of this DNA is more mysterious than you'd expect. The Ross Ice Shelf, Antarctica's frozen giant. Before we get into the DNA discoveries, you need to understand just how massive and impressive these Antarctic ice structures really are. The Ross Ice Shelf is the largest floating body of ice on our entire planet. We're talking about an ice platform roughly the size of France, covering about 480,000 square kilometers of ocean. This isn't your typical frozen lake. The Ross Ice Shelf can be almost 750 meters thick in some areas. That's about 2,460 feet of solid ice. The edge that faces the open ocean is called the ice front or the Great Ice Barrier, and it's like a massive vertical wall of ice stretching for about 800 kilometers. In some places, this wall rises between 50 to 200 feet above the water surface, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, literally. About 90% of the ice shelf actually sits below the waterline. Sir James Clark Ross first discovered this enormous ice barrier back in 1841. When he encountered it, he famously said it was like trying to sail through the cliffs of Dover. The sheer scale of this ice wall stopped his expedition in its tracks. For over a century, this frozen fortress has captured the imagination of explorers and scientists alike. Little did anyone know that beneath all this ice lay ancient secrets waiting to be discovered. The ice shelf constantly moves forward, pushing into the sea at a rate of about 5 to 10 feet per day. Glaciers continually feed new ice into the shelf, while massive chunks break off in a process called calving. These aren't small ice cubes we're talking about. In March 2000, an iceberg called B-15 broke off from the Ross Ice Shelf. It was the world's largest recorded iceberg at the time. The drilling challenge. Drilling through Antarctic ice is not like drilling anywhere else on Earth. Scientists have to deal with some of the most brutal conditions imaginable. Temperatures can drop to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or even colder. Winds can reach hurricane-force speeds. And you're working in one of the most remote places on the planet, hundreds of miles from the nearest research station. Teams spend months planning these drilling operations. They need specialized equipment that can handle extreme cold without breaking down. The drilling process itself is incredibly slow and methodical. For ice cores, researchers use mechanical drills that can reach depths of over 2,000 meters in some locations. Each meter of ice they extract can contain thousands of years of climate data. But here's where it gets really interesting. In places like the Ross Ice Shelf, scientists aren't just drilling through ice sitting on land. They're drilling through floating ice shelves that sit above ocean water. This means they first have to drill through anywhere from 300 to over 700 meters of ice just to reach the water below. Then, in some cases, they need to drill even deeper into the seafloor sediments beneath that water. The logistics are mind-blowing. Teams have to fly in hundreds of tons of fuel and equipment using ski-mounted planes. They set up field camps in areas where no human has ever set foot before. These camps need to be completely self-sufficient because there's no running to the store if something goes wrong. Every tool, every piece of equipment, every meal has to be carefully planned and transported to these incredibly remote locations. The oldest ice ever found. Now here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. In October 2025, scientists announced they had discovered 6-million-year-old ice in the Allan Hills region of East Antarctica. This shattered all previous records. The oldest ice ever directly dated before this was only about 2.7 million years old. So we're talking about ice that's more than double the age of anything previously found. Sarah Shackleton from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution led this groundbreaking study. She and her team collected these ancient ice samples between 2019 and 2023. The Allan Hills area is about 6,500 feet above sea level in one of the most remote parts of Antarctica. The team had to drill between 330 to 660 feet down through the ice sheet to extract these precious cores. But how do you know how old ice really is? The researchers used an incredibly clever method. They Measured radioactive decay and argon isotopes present in tiny air pockets trapped inside the ice. Think about it like this. When snow falls and eventually compresses into ice, it traps bubbles of air from that exact moment in time. These bubbles are like little time capsules preserving the ancient atmosphere. The 6 million-year-old ice contains the oldest directly dated air ever discovered on Earth. We're talking about breathing an atmosphere from a time when our planet was significantly warmer than today, when sea levels were much higher, and when Antarctica looked completely different. The team also traced oxygen isotopes in the ice cores and discovered something remarkable. The data showed that Antarctica has undergone a steady cooling of about 22 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 6 million years. DNA in the ice, the shocking discovery. Here's where things get truly mind-blowing. Scientists didn't just find ancient ice, they found ancient DNA perfectly preserved inside it. We're talking about genetic material from organisms that lived hundreds of thousands, even millions of years ago. This discovery has opened up an entirely new way of understanding Antarctica's past. In 2022, researchers announced they had found 1 million-year-old DNA buried beneath the Antarctic seafloor in the Scotia Sea. These genetic samples, called sedimentary ancient DNA or SETA DNA, were collected from up to 584 feet beneath the seafloor. The team discovered DNA from thousands of ancient organisms, including diatoms, which are microscopic phytoplankton that form the foundation of marine food webs. But wait, there's more. In studies of Lake Vostok, one of Antarctica's largest subglacial lakes, buried beneath over 2 miles of ice, scientists found DNA from over 3,500 different organisms in the ice above the lake. This ice, called accretion ice, forms when lake water freezes onto the bottom of the overlying glacier. Some of ice dia. This ice is between 5,000 to 10,000 years old, and in some spots, it's more than 650 feet thick. The organisms they discovered were diverse beyond belief. Scientists found bacteria, fungi, and even DNA from animals like tiny deep-sea mollusks and water fleas. These are creatures that somehow survived in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Dr. Scott Rogers from Bowling Green State University, who led some of this research, explained that these organisms are extremely small and have adapted to survive in conditions that would kill most other life forms. The contamination challenge. Now, you might be wondering, how do scientists know this DNA is really ancient and not just modern contamination? That's actually one of the biggest challenges in this type of research. When you're drilling through ice, there's always a risk that modern bacteria or DNA from the surface could contaminate your samples. Over the past decade, researchers have developed incredibly strict decontamination techniques. When ice cores are brought up from the depths, the outside of the core has been exposed to modern air and potentially contaminated. So scientists developed a method where they essentially wash the outside of the ice core with bleach. Then they melt, filter, and refreeze specific sections of the ice to isolate the truly ancient material trapped inside. The team analyzing the CDA DNA samples looks closely at damage patterns within the recovered DNA fragments. Ancient DNA has specific characteristics that modern DNA doesn't have. Over hundreds of thousands of years, DNA degrades in predictable ways. By examining these damage patterns, scientists can establish with remarkable accuracy exactly how old the genetic material is. For the 1 million-year-old DNA found in the Scotia Sea, researchers used cutting-edge sequencing technology to analyze the samples. They compared the genetic sequences to massive databases of known organisms. When they find matches, they can identify what species or groups of organisms the DNA came from. But here's the really cool part. Sometimes they find DNA that doesn't match anything in the databases, suggesting there might be unknown or extinct species preserved in these ancient samples. The preservation of DNA in Antarctic ice and sediments is possible because of several key factors. The extreme cold slows down the breakdown of genetic material. The darkness at depth means there's no ultraviolet radiation to damage the DNA. And in seafloor sediments, low oxygen concentrations help preserve organic material. Antarctica is basically a perfect natural freezer for ancient biological material. Hidden ecosystems beneath the ice. One of the most surprising discoveries has been finding active, living ecosystems in places where scientists never expected life to exist. In December 2021, researchers drilling through the Larsen ice shelf noticed an unusual groove and decided to Investigate. They drilled down more than 1,600 feet and found a subterranean river flowing beneath the ice. But here's what shocked them. The river was full of life. Darting around in this pitch-black, freezing water were amphipods, which are small, crustacean-like creatures. The team had expected maybe to find some simple bacteria, but not complex animals thriving in such an extreme environment. This discovery revealed an entire deep-water ecosystem existing where it absolutely wasn't anticipated. Scientists have also discovered networks of subglacial caves in Antarctica, particularly around Mount Erebus, an active volcano. The volcanic steam from Mount Erebus has carved out warm caves beneath the ice. These caves can reach temperatures up to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and sunlight can penetrate through thin sections of overlying ice. When researchers collected soil samples from these caves, they found DNA from algae, mosses, and various animal life. Lead. Researcher Caradwyn Fraser from the Australian National University said the results give us a tantalizing glimpse of what might live beneath the ice in Antarctica. She suggested there might even be entirely new species of animals and plants waiting to be discovered. Think about that for a moment. Beneath the frozen surface of Antarctica, there could be unique forms of life that exist nowhere else on Earth. The Ross Ice Shelf itself has revealed surprising life forms. Scientists using hot water drills to bore through the ice discovered tiny sea anemones burrowed into the underside of the ice shelf. These small white creatures live upside down, hanging from the ice ceiling with their tentacles stretching into the freezing water. They've been named Edwardsiella andrilla, and thousands of them were found living in this incredibly unusual habitat. What the DNA tells us about climate history. The ancient DNA preserved in Antarctic ice and sediments is like a biological record book of Earth's past. By analyzing which organisms were present at different times, scientists can reconstruct what environmental conditions were like hundreds of thousands of years ago. The DNA from the Scotia Sea showed that about 540,000 years ago, there was a massive explosion in the abundance of diatoms. Why does this matter? This diatom bloom happened right around the time Earth was undergoing a natural warming phase. The data suggests that increased ice loss from Antarctica's ice sheets and rising ocean temperatures fueled rapid growth and reproduction of these microscopic organisms. In other words, when Antarctica warmed up in the past, it triggered huge changes in marine ecosystems. Michael Weber, a geologist from the University of Bonn, explained that this ecosystem change is connected to a rapid increase in global sea levels and massive ice loss in Antarctica due to natural warming. This is really important research because it helps scientists understand what might happen to Antarctica as our planet warms due to modern climate change. The CETA DNA record from different time periods shows how Antarctic ecosystems responded to climate fluctuations over the past million years. During colder glacial periods when atmospheric carbon dioxide was low, certain types of organisms dominated. During warmer interglacial periods, the mix of species changed dramatically. This tells us that Antarctic marine life is incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. One of the most fascinating aspects is what scientists call the diatom switch. These microscopic organisms are the foundation of Antarctic food webs. When their populations boom or crash, it affects everything up the food chain, from krill to penguins to seals to whales. By understanding how diatom populations changed in the past, researchers can better predict how future warming will impact the entire Antarctic ecosystem. Octopus DNA and ice sheet collapse. Here's a discovery. That sounds like it came straight out of a science fiction novel. Scientists used DNA from octopuses to prove that Antarctica's massive western ice sheet collapsed about 100,000 years ago. Let me explain how they figured this out, because it's absolutely brilliant. Turquoise octopus is a small cephalopod with a body about the length of a pencil. These creatures live all around Antarctica in water down to 1 kilometer deep. Today, populations of these octopuses are separated by the West Antarctic ice sheet. They can't travel from one side to the other because the ice is in the way. Researchers collected tissue samples from 96 octopuses over 33 years and sequenced their DNA. Sally Lau, an evolutionary geneticist from James Cook University, analyzed genetic markers to see how different populations were related. Here's what they found. The DNA showed that populations which are now separated by ice actually interbred with each other relatively recently in geological terms. The only way these octopus populations could have mixed is if the ice sheet between them wasn't there. The genetic evidence suggests that about 125,000 years ago, during the last interglacial period when global temperatures were similar to today, the West Antarctic ice sheet collapsed. This opened up waterways between the Ross Sea, the Weddell Sea, and the Amundsen Sea, allowing the octopuses to mingle. Then, when the ice sheet reformed, the octopus populations became isolated again. But the story of their ancient interbreeding remained preserved in their DNA. This research was published in the journal Science and provides compelling evidence that West Antarctic ice sheets can and have collapsed during warm periods in Earth's past. Implications for future sea level rise. Why does finding DNA in Antarctic ice matter for our future? Because understanding Antarctica's past helps scientists predict what might happen as our planet continues to warm. The discovery that the West Antarctic ice sheet collapsed during the last interglacial period is particularly concerning. During that time, about 125,000 years ago, global temperatures were only about 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial times. That's similar to the temperature targets set in the Paris Climate Agreement, which aims to limit warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. If warming in that range caused the West Antarctic ice sheet to collapse in the past, what does that mean for the future? If the West Antarctic ice sheet were to collapse today, it would contribute between 3.3 to 5 meters of sea level rise. That's about 10 to 16 feet. Major coastal cities around the world would be underwater. Millions of people would be displaced. The economic and humanitarian consequences would be staggering. Claire Jasper, a graduate student at Columbia University studying ancient Antarctic sediments, found evidence that during the last interglacial period, there was a huge increase in iceberg debris being carried north from Antarctica. This supports the DNA evidence from the octopuses. Multiple independent lines of research are pointing to the same conclusion. Large portions of Antarctic ice have collapsed before when the planet was only slightly warmer than pre-industrial levels. Current research projects like SEWAS-2C are actively drilling through the Ross Ice Shelf to recover geological records that will help scientists better project future sea level rise. The team is collecting sediment cores from beneath the ice shelf and analyzing ancient DNA in those sediments to understand how past climate changes affected ice shelf stability. This research is crucial because the Ross Ice Shelf helps stabilize the West Antarctic ice sheet. If the Ross Ice Shelf were to weaken or collapse, it could trigger accelerated ice loss from inland glaciers. The technology behind the discoveries. The technology behind these discoveries is nearly as remarkable as the findings themselves. Modern ice core drilling relies on highly precise equipment designed to extract ice without contamination. Scientists use electromechanical drills that reach several thousand meters deep, shaving ice while preserving a clean cylindrical core that is carefully stored at freezing temperatures. To analyze ancient DNA, researchers use advanced molecular techniques like shotgun sequencing, reading tiny DNA fragments and matching them to known species using global databases. Dating the ice involves counting annual layers in younger samples and measuring radioactive isotopes in older ice. Satellites and radar further aid research by mapping hidden landscapes beneath the ice, guiding where drilling should occur. Challenges of Antarctic research. Working in Antarctica is brutal and unforgiving. It's the coldest place on Earth, with months of total darkness in winter and extreme isolation if anything goes wrong. Even during the short summer field season, harsh weather can halt operations for weeks, grounding planes and cutting off resupply or evacuation. Scientists live in cramped, basic conditions with limited food, water, and hygiene, while equipment constantly risks failure in the extreme cold. Yet researchers keep returning because Antarctica holds priceless clues about Earth's climate history, extreme life, and our planet's future, making every hardship worth it. Scientists drilling deep into Antarctica's vast ice walls have uncovered ancient DNA that is reshaping what we know about Earth's history. From million-year-old ice cores to hidden ecosystems beneath the ice, this DNA reveals past ice sheet collapses, dramatic climate shifts, and life-surviving extreme conditions. These discoveries offer rare clues about how our planet may change in the future. If scientists could drill anywhere in Antarctica and discover anything hidden beneath the ice, what would you want them to find? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.